Elias Vance clutched his genuine designer briefcase, the soft leather doing little to soothe his carefully cultivated trembles as he swept into the bustling Metropolitan Hospital emergency room. This was his fourth visit in as many weeks, and the familiar scent of antiseptic barely registered. "I just can't breathe properly," he gasped to the triage nurse, his voice carrying the breathy quality perfected through years of private vocal coaching. "My heart keeps racing, and I have this terrible chest pain." The nurse, clearly recognizing Elias, typed notes with weary politeness. "Same symptoms as last week, Mr. Vance. Worse, much worse." Elias's phone buzzed with a text from his father, Sir Alistair Vance in Dubai. "Manage your own crises, darling." His mother's assistant sent a similar message from Geneva. Even his brother, Callum, had stopped returning his calls after the third hospital visit this month. Elias's opulent apartment, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital, offered no warmth. Rooms filled with priceless art and antique furniture echoed with silence. Family photos, staged for magazine spreads, lined the halls. Since graduating from his prestigious art history program, a degree he'd never used, his days had become a blur of spa appointments, exclusive parties, and superficial charity events. His illnesses were the only time his family seemed to pay him any real attention, fleeting as it was. A calm, imposing black woman in her early 30s approached his gurney, chart in hand. Her badge read, Danielle Carter, RN. Her dark eyes held a professional demeanor, but something about them was different, a subtle depth Elias hadn't encountered before. "I'm Nurse Carter. I'll be taking care of you today, Mr. Vance." Elias immediately slipped into his most vulnerable persona, allowing tears to well in his perfectly made-up eyes. "Thank you. Everyone else seems to think I'm making this up, but I know something's really wrong." Danielle's gaze was unnervingly direct. She studied his face with an intensity that made Elias feel a strange, uncomfortable sensation, like she was seeing past the performance. "Let's get you settled and run some tests," she said quietly, her voice resonating with an unusual gravitas. "We'll figure out what's really going on." The emphasis on really sent a genuine shiver down Elias's spine, a flutter of nervousness replacing his practiced dramatics. He hadn't prepared for this level of scrutiny. 2 days later, Elias was back, this time claiming debilitating abdominal pain that radiated to his back. He'd researched the symptoms online, knowing they would require extensive testing and guarantee several hours of medical attention. "Mr. Vance, back again?" The reception staff's barely concealed eye rolls only fueled his resolve. "Much more serious," Elias gasped, doubling over slightly for effect. "I need to see someone immediately." When Danielle appeared to escort him to an examination room, Elias felt an unexpected flutter of genuine nervousness alongside his practiced performance. "How are you feeling today, Mr. Vance?" she asked as she took his vital signs. "Please call me Elias, and I'm feeling terrible. This pain is excruciating." Danielle nodded, but Elias caught her observing his face when she thought he wasn't looking. "On a scale of 1 to 10, Elias?" 9. Definitely a 9. Elias clutched the bed rails dramatically. "That's serious pain. Let me ask, what were you doing exactly when the pain started? What did you eat?" Elias fumbled, realizing his online research hadn't covered these specific questions. "I was at home. It just suddenly hit me. At home doing what?" "Just sitting, reading." Danielle continued her assessment with professional thoroughness, but Elias sensed something different in her approach. She wasn't dismissive, but she wasn't entirely convinced either. Danielle leaned in, her expression unreadable. "Elias," she said softly, "I want to help you feel better, but sometimes the most effective treatment requires honesty about what's truly causing the pain." Elias started to protest. "I'm being honest. Why does everyone think I'm lying?" Danielle's eyes met his. "I don't think you're lying about pain, Elias. I think you might be mistaken about what kind of pain you're experiencing." She paused, then delivered the first unexpected blow. "You see, your family isn't just known for their wealth, Elias. They're known for their connections. And I've seen what happens when people get caught in their orbit." Elias's breath caught. The air around them crackled with an unspoken tension that had nothing to do with his feigned ailments. Later that visit, Dr. Evans, a harried resident, finally lost patience. Mr. Vance, all your tests are normal. Everything indicates you're in perfect physical health. That's impossible. I know something's wrong. Perhaps you should consider speaking with our psychiatric consultant. I'm not crazy. Elias's voice rose, attracting attention. Danielle appeared at the doorway. Dr. Evans, could I speak with you privately? After a brief hallway consultation, Danielle returned alone, closing the door behind her. Elias, can we talk? She asked gently. Honestly, I've been honest. No one believes me. I believe you're in pain, but I think it's emotional pain manifesting as physical symptoms. Tears, real ones this time, sprang to Elias's eyes. You think I'm faking everything. I think you're a young man who's desperately trying to get someone to notice that he's hurting. The accuracy of her assessment hit like a physical blow. That's not. I'm not. When was the last time anyone in your family asked how you were feeling when you weren't in a hospital? When was the last time you felt genuinely cared for, not just medically managed? Stop. The word came out as a whisper. Danielle sat down beside his bed, her presence somehow both professional and deeply personal. Elias, you don't need to be sick to deserve attention. You don't need to be in crisis to matter to people. Yes, I do, he sobbed, tears flowing freely now. It's the only time anyone notices I exist. That's not true. It is true. My father's too busy building his empire. My mother's perpetually traveling. My brother's focused on his own social climbing. My friends only care about parties and shopping. When I'm sick, at least someone has to pay attention. Danielle handed him tissues, waiting while he cried. Not the dramatic tears of his performances, but the raw, honest grief of someone finally admitting his desperate loneliness. That night, Elias sat alone in his silent apartment. Danielle's words echoed. You don't need to be sick to deserve attention. He scrolled through his phone. Not a single call, only shallow texts about social media posts. He found himself in his father's study. His name appeared only in medical emergency notifications on his calendar. Elias realized Danielle was the first person in months who'd truly seen him. He decided to volunteer at the hospital, specifically in the pediatric ward, as a way to engage with genuine pain and contribute meaningfully. The backlash came from unexpected sources. When Elias started volunteering, his mother called from Geneva, aghast. Darling, Dr. Albright says you're volunteering. That's lovely, but surely you could find something more suitable. The National Gallery needs benefactors. I like working with patients, Mother. It feels meaningful. Meaningful? Alina's voice carried the slight disapproval Elias had learned to recognize. Sweetheart, we contribute to medical facilities through donations, not by mingling with patients. There are appropriate ways to be charitable. Elias's college friends were equally confused when he declined shopping trips to volunteer. A hospital, Elias? That's so dreary. What's gotten into you? Even Mrs. Jenkins, the family's longtime housekeeper and confidant, a dignified elderly white woman who had served the Vance family for decades, expressed quiet concern. Mr. Elias, you seem different, happier. But, are you sure about this? People will talk. Talk about what? About a Vance boy spending time with a black woman from a different world? The comment stung, but Mrs. Jenkins' eyes narrowed, a deeper concern in their depths. Not just that, dear. Talk about the source of her information. Your family's secrets run deep, and some people are paid well to keep them quiet, or to use them. Elias's heart pounded. What was Mrs. Jenkins hinting at? The pleasant facade of his privileged life began to crack. What if I don't care what people think? Elias challenged. Your parents care. Your reputation matters for their business relationships. But Elias found himself caring less about his family's approval and more about the conversations he had with Danielle during breaks. The way she explained medical procedures to frightened patients, how she treated everyone regardless of insurance or social status with the same compassionate professionalism. Mrs. Jenkins, he said finally, what if the world I'm supposed to fit into isn't worth belonging to? Mrs. Jenkins studied him carefully. Then maybe it's time to find a better world, dear. But be prepared. Leaving one world for another always costs something. An honest conversation happened in the hospital cafeteria during Danielle's dinner break. Elias, having stayed late to help with evening patient rounds, sat at a corner table. "Can I ask you something personal?" Elias said. "Do you think I'm just another spoiled rich boy playing at having problems?" Danielle sat down with her sandwich. "I think you're someone who's been starved for genuine connection and didn't know healthy ways to ask for it." "That's a diplomatic way of saying yes." "No, it's an honest way of saying your problems are real, even if your solutions weren't working." Elias felt tears threaten, not performative tears, but the real vulnerability he was still learning to express. "I've been lying to get attention for so long, I forgot how to just be honest about needing people. Admitting that I'm 24 and have never had a meaningful relationship, that my parents treat me like an expensive accessory, that I graduated with honors and have done nothing productive. And now, I want to matter, not because I'm rich or sick or dramatic, but because I'm contributing something valuable." Danielle reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "Elias, you've been reading to pediatric patients for 2 weeks. You make them laugh, help them forget their pain for a few minutes. That's not performative, that's real. But about us? Am I just transferring my need for attention to you? Maybe, but maybe that's how healing starts, with one genuine relationship that teaches you what authentic connection feels like." Elias looked at their joined hands. "I'm scared," he whispered. "Of what? Of losing this? Of going back to being invisible?" "You're not invisible anymore. The question is what you're going to do with being seen." The crisis erupted when Sir Alistair Vance returned from Dubai and demanded a family meeting. He sat at the head of their formal dining room table, Elena participating via video call, and Callum arriving for the intervention. "Elias, we're worried about this hospital obsession," Sir Alistair began. "Dr. Albright says you're spending more time there than some paid staff." "It's meaningful work, Dad. I'm helping people." "That's admirable, but there are appropriate ways to help people, writing checks, attending fundraising galas." Callum leaned forward. "Elias, Mom and Dad are worried you're having some kind of breakdown. This sudden personality change isn't healthy." "What if it's not a breakdown? What if it's finally growing up?" "Growing up doesn't mean abandoning your social responsibilities." Elena's voice cut through the air. "There are rumors about you spending time with inappropriate people, a nurse specifically. A black female nurse who's obviously taking advantage of your emotional vulnerability." "Taking advantage? Danielle has never asked me for anything. She's been nothing but professional and kind." "Exactly what someone would do if they were planning a long-term con," Callum added. "These people are experts at identifying wealthy, lonely men." "These people," Elias's voice rose dangerously. "People from different backgrounds who see opportunity in wealthy families," Sir Alistair clarified. "You think Danielle is using me because she's black?" Elias felt a cold rage build within him. "The only thing I don't understand is how I was raised by people who measure human worth by bank accounts and skin color." "Elias Alexander Vance," Sir Alistair's voice carried genuine shock. "I'm ashamed of you, all of you, and for the first time in my life, I'm not ashamed of myself." He turned to leave. "She's not just some nurse, Elias." Sir Alistair roared, his face contorted with rage. "She's their nurse, the one who exposed the truth about the clinical trials we funded. The ones that cost us millions in reputation and nearly ruined us. We nearly went bankrupt covering it up. She's trying to get revenge." Elias froze. The crisis his parents always vaguely referred to, the sudden, unexplained dips in their fortune. He looked at his family, seeing their true faces for the first time. Not just dismissive, but ruthless and deceitful. You covered up failed clinical trials? People were hurt?" His father avoided his gaze. Elias walked out, leaving his family stunned. Elias found Danielle in the hospital parking garage. "My family knows about you," he said, his voice strained. "But they know more than I thought. They say you're seeking revenge for something they covered up." Danielle looked up. "And what do you think?" Elias climbed into her passenger seat. "I think you work 60-hour weeks. I think you drive an old car because you send money to your family. I think you've never asked me about my family's money." He paused then. "And I think you were the nurse who exposed their fraudulent clinical trials, weren't you? That's why you're here." Danielle nodded slowly. Their deceit caused real harm, Elias. I saw it firsthand. I pursued nursing because I wanted to be part of the solution, not the problem. And when I saw you coming in here, desperate for attention, I saw an opportunity, not for revenge on your family, but for something more profound. To help you see beyond their lies, and to perhaps, in your own way, rectify some of the harm done. So, Elias whispered, you weren't just a compassionate nurse. You had an agenda. Danielle met his gaze steadily. Yes, an agenda to bring truth to light and to help someone lost in a world of artifice find their own path. My initial approach to you was calculated, yes, to observe and understand. But what grew between us, Elias, that was real. The question is whether you're ready to live differently, not just feel differently. Elias looked at the hospital, where he'd found purpose, and at Danielle, whose complex integrity had both challenged and drawn him in. I want to try. I want to help. Will you help me figure out how to expose them and to atone for my family's actions? 1 year later, Elias sat in the break room of Metropolitan Hospital, wearing his student nurse scrubs, reviewing notes for his clinical rotation exam. Danielle entered with coffee. How'd the pediatric assessment go? She asked. Excellent. Mrs. Albright said I'm ready for independent patient care next month. That's huge. He paused, his expression becoming more serious. And the legal team says we have enough evidence to move forward with the class action lawsuit against Vance Pharmaceuticals. It's happening, Danielle. Elias looked around the break room, a place that once represented his manufactured illnesses, now a symbol of his authentic purpose. He was tired, challenged, useful. Danielle, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think I would have found this path without getting sick, without meeting you, knowing your truth? Danielle considered carefully. Maybe. Eventually. You had the capacity for growth, you just needed someone to see it. And sometimes the truth, no matter how it comes out, sets us free to find our own way. Through the break room window, Elias could see the pediatric ward. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Jenkins. Your father wants to have dinner. He's ready to talk. And the lawyers are calling, dear. My family wants to reconcile, he said, showing Danielle the message. Now that they're facing exposure and public scrutiny. How do you feel about that? Cautious, hopeful. They can't undo the damage of never truly seeing me, but maybe they can learn to see who I'm becoming, and perhaps accept the consequences of their actions. Danielle reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. And who are you becoming? Elias looked at their joined hands, then at his nursing textbooks, finally at Danielle's face, where he'd first learned what it meant to be truly seen. Someone who fights for what's right. He said with quiet certainty, finally.